Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Jonasz Regiski. Czechs are heading to the polls today in the final hours of the parliamentary elections. Voting wraps up at 2 o'clock this afternoon, with results expected later tonight. However, the process has been overshadowed by technical issues, security concerns and growing fears of Russian disinformation. Our correspondent Alexandra Bulenda is in Prague with the latest. Alexandra, what can you tell us so far, especially when it comes to all those issues that were encountered along the way?
Well, the final 3 hours of voting are underway in the Czech Republic, and as you mentioned now, this decisive day hasn't been without disruptions. We do know that technical glitches and even security scares have overshadowed the race, with some analysts warning that this might be Russian disinformation. Now, on Friday, yesterday, many voters struggled with a new e-Doklady app, and it means that the ID couldn't be updated. It's their electronic ID, leaving some unable to use them at polling stations. And officials urged voters to bring traditional IDs, warning that problems could persist even today. And some analysts warn that this might have been some sort of attack coming from Russia. It is unconfirmed, but some analysts claim that it might be the case. Now, it did not stop voters, and I even asked some of them what is their general sentiment, what do they feel about now this election and who they voted for, and here's what they said.
What really matters in these elections is geopolitical anchoring and budget stability. The government needs at least 4 years to keep us on the right course. We worry imbalances could emerge, but we hope the final days of campaigning point to a good outcome and that the government can carry on.
Well, of course, I cast my ballot for my husband. He's with SPOLU. I'm keeping all my fingers crossed for him.
For me, it was more important to decide who not to vote for than who to vote for. I used what's called the Čermák method. I picked the ballots of all parties I could imagine in parliament, the ones that don't bother me. Then I drew one at random, so I don't carry the burden of responsibility for a single party.
Now, analysts cautioned that both technical breakdowns and false alarms that happened at the now local airport here in Prague risk feeding into Russian disinformation narratives that we've seen now all over the past week. And in an already polarized election that we are facing, even small disruptions can erode voter confidence. Now, meanwhile, technology is also helping to cut through uncertainty, and I'm talking here about AI. Now, BlindSpot AI's predictive model is expected to give an early and adequate sense of the outcome once counting begins, as now in the Czech Republic we do not have exit polls. So now this model is something that is already been proven in the past elections as very useful. So with polling stations now closing at 2 p.m, results will start flowing tonight. So after weeks of now a very feisty campaigning, Czechs will now be deciding the future at the ballot box. So it seems that the heart of the CEE region beats now in the Czech Republic. Back to you.
Alexandra Bulenda there, reporting live from Prague and witnessing those events just hours before the polling stations close in the Czech Republic. Alexandra, thank you very much for being here with us today. Now, after the Czech President cast his vote in the country's decisive parliamentary election, Petr Pavel told the media it will be challenging for Prague to form a new government. It is Pavel's task, following the elections, to nominate the country's new prime minister.
That's definitely going to be difficult, because if we look at the rather heated pre-election atmosphere, parties were defining themselves in opposition to each other, and unfortunately that was the case for both the current governing coalition and the opposition, so building bridges across those trenches that have been dug isn't going to be easy. Similarly, it won't be easy to form a majority in the lower house, so I think the negotiations probably won't be easy either.
Now, voters in Georgia are also facing a decision today, albeit a slightly different one. Take part in local elections or join protests outside Parliament this evening in a show of defiance against the government. Let's go live now to our correspondent Don Arleth in the Georgian capital Tbilisi for more on how the opposition is fighting for the government's removal. So, good morning, Don. How is the opposition actually going to go about it? What is the strategy?
Yes, good morning, Jonas. So, well, the strategy seems like one that's somewhat counterintuitive, because if you don't take part in the elections, then you can't have a seat at the table. However, everyone that I've talked to, all of the opposition parties are boycotting this except two. And those two, some people say one of is a Moscow project. The other one, they say that they're just simply naive. Now, everyone that I've talked to has said that they cannot give legitimacy or extend legitimacy to this government because they have been demanding for 310 days now that they step down. We're already seeing reports that people from around the country are traveling to the capital here in Tbilisi to join in this protest, which is set to take place or begin at least at 4 o'clock local time, p.m. And, well, we're seeing reports of people coming. The mayor of the city here in Tbilisi has said that people have the right to gather, they have a right to express their opinions, but if there's any breaking of any laws, the police will crack down on the protesters, leaving a lot of questions as to what we'll see later on today and just how big these protests will really be. I talked to a lot of people yesterday, but one person in particular who really kind of summed it up really well, exactly why they're protesting, why they don't see this government as legitimate, and why they're boycotting these elections. Let's listen.
I wouldn't call it elections, because how we can call it elections when all these state institutions are captured by the government. So how you can win when the police, the prosecutor's office, the court, city hall, the parliament, all the ministers, all these organizations and the people who are working there are the puppets of the oligarch, Russian oligarch, which is Bidzina Ivanishvili. And in this reality, and this is really like we can call it a Russian regime, which goes to the authoritarian way when we have the more than 50 political prisoners in the country. Our authoritarian regimes don't leave the power with the elections. It doesn't exist in the world.
Now, protesters also told me yesterday that this is somewhat of their last chance to make a real impact. Speaking with the country's fifth president, Slobodan Zhorabashvili, earlier this week, she said that they're hoping that these protests begin today and gain momentum that we saw last December. Of course, that's when we saw hundreds of thousands take to the streets on a daily basis. And, well, they're looking to restart that again. They're looking to pressure the government to step down. They want a transitional government until they can hold a new round of parliamentary elections. But that seems like it'll be a very difficult feat to accomplish. Jonas.
Don Alef there, a special correspondent in Tbilisi, reporting on the latest events and the dilemma faced by voters. Don, thank you very much for being here with us. Now we're going to move on to our next story. Hamas has agreed to accept some of Donald Trump's conditions and release Israeli hostages. The US president told Israel to immediately stop its bombardment of Gaza, but footage showed explosions in the war zone overnight. The Israel Defense Forces have reportedly received orders to suspend offensive operations in Gaza and shift to defensive actions only.
Friday night saw explosions light up the sky in Gaza, despite what many believe is a breakthrough in the Israeli-Hamas war. The Islamist militant movement shared its response to Trump's 20-point plan to end the conflict, agreeing to some of the conditions laid down by the American president. The group, however, suggested it would look to hold further negotiations concerning some issues, including Gaza's disarmament and the rate of Israeli withdrawal from the area. On Friday, Trump cautioned Hamas that all hell would break out should it not agree to the proposal. According to Palestine's health ministry, some 66,000 Palestinians have been killed in the war, including more than 19,000 children.
Pro-Palestinian protests were held around the world after Donald Trump proposed a plan for the resolution of the Gaza conflict. In several Muslim countries, including Pakistan, Malaysia and Bangladesh, people took to the streets to voice their objection to the recent interception of the Gaza-bound flotilla carrying aid for the war-stricken area. They also demonstrated against Trump's peace proposal, saying it was biased in favor of Israel. Protests were also seen throughout Europe, with people in German capital Berlin calling for peace, all the while marking 35 years since their country's reunification. Italians held a general strike, disrupting trains and port traffic, which fueled a number of clashes between the protesters and the police. In France, a pro-Israeli protest was held, reminding the public of the victims of the Hamas attack, 3 days shy of the second anniversary of the event that led to the outbreak of the Gaza war. The world's top under-30 pianists are set to perform on the second day of performances at the 19th International Frédéric Chopin Piano Competition, which officially kicked off on Thursday in Warsaw. The Poland-based contest, which is organized every 5 years, has gathered 66 pianists from 19 countries. Saturday will see artists from China, Poland, the United Kingdom and Germany, as well as a Russian performing under a neutral flag. The performances will undergo rigorous scrutiny and some of the pianists will crash out the competition. In order to triumph in the contest and snatch 60,000 euros in prize money, the winner will need to pass through 3 rounds and get to the final. The final results will be announced in the second half of October. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching and please stay with us here on TVP World.